some people are still coming in the front door. Hi, my name is Michael Warner. Thank you everybody for coming. In the front, there's some people collecting contact information, phone numbers and emails of people that want to be involved. You can give us as much or as little information as you want to. We're not here to spy on anybody, so yeah. So, can you guys hear me all right? No? All right, okay. I recognize some faces here from Tuesday. I'm really glad to see such a great turnout. I appreciate everyone concerned, everyone coming out. That's louder.
Is that better?
Yeah. I am resisting so many hilarious comments right now. Oh man, I love the cannabis movement. I love it. So my name is Michael Warner. I've kind of organized this little thing here today and organized all my friends, some of the best and brightest minds in the cannabis movement in California. I am a 15-year Lake County resident. I've been everything from a business owner to an account executive for a local radio station here in Lake County. I was the president of the Clear Lake Chamber of Commerce, one of the founding members and vice president of the Lake County Tipsters. I come from a business background. I'm a business leader and a business organizer. I come into the cannabis movement from that perspective, although I am a patient. I think that this is one of the most important issues that we face in Lake County in terms of our economy that there is. And I think you know and I know that if it wasn't for cannabis, there would not be an economy in Lake County. And I know this to be true. I talk to business owners every day for years. And everybody from sporting goods stores to car stereo shops to gift shops to people who are directly involved in the industry, grow shops and hydroponic stores and garden shops, all of them said the same thing to me, that they would not be in business if it wasn't for cannabis cultivators. And so that's why this issue is important to me, because I love Lake County and I think there's opportunity here in this for us as a responsibly regulated industry that we can realize a future for this county that so far up to date has been reserved for a few. And then we can give that to many. So from that heart and that spirit, I come here and organize this thing. So this panel behind me, I'm going to start at the end. This is James Anthony. He is a land use attorney. He is a campaign consultant and has run some very great campaigns all over the state. Measure Z, Berkeley, Mariposa. He's working on San Jose. He is one of the best and most prominent recognized names in land use law that there is. And we're lucky to have him. And then next to him is Kristen Nevedal. Kristen Nevedal, you might know her from the Emerald Growers Association. She is a cannabis rock star. If you want her autograph, you can get that after the panel presentation. And she is our policy expert working with us on this campaign. Next to her, we have the infamous Dan Rush. Dan Rush is the national director for the UFCW, that's the United Food and Commercial Workers Union. He is the national director for the Cannabis Workers Rising campaign in the UFCW. Thanks for coming, Dan. And we all know Ron Green, who is our normal representative here. He's an attorney and a long-standing cannabis activist here in Lake County. Probably one of the original cannabis activists. And we're very lucky to have Ron Green be a resident of this county and have him as a resource. And next to him we have Joe Fernandez, who is a former leader of the Green Farmers. The Green Farmers have been a part of what we're working on here. And then next to him, we have Terry Larson. Oh, sorry, and we have Terry Larson representing the Patients' Rights Commission, Patients' Rights Committee. I'm sorry, we recently changed the name. And she is our patient liaison, patient resource for our campaign and advocate. Patient advocate, I like that. And then we have John McClure from ASA, that's Americans for Safe Access. So this panel here is your stakeholders. This is the institutions. These are the people who have been fighting for legalization for as long as there's been a fight going on. And then some of the best professional help that we could possibly find. I have founded CAVIC, which is Community Alliance to Ban Illegal Cannabis Cultivation. And that is a PAC, it's a political action committee. And we have raised a bunch of money, and we're going to continue. We're going to continue to raise a bunch of money with your help. And we are going to run a professional, well-rounded, well-presented, whole-organized campaign for cannabis in my county. And I've assembled these people, your stakeholders, and your experts here tonight to paint a picture of what that might look like for our county. We have several options available to us. We're going to look at those options tonight. You're going to have a chance to give us some feedback. We have some index cards up there on the table. If you have questions or if you develop a question while one of our panelists is speaking, please write that question down. At the end of the panel discussion, the panel speaking, I will collect those questions and we'll ask the panel, and I'll direct the questions to the appropriate panel member. Our hired guns, I really wanted to put what I thought would be the best team, the most active and brightest minds in the cannabis movement. And I do, you know, I'm an activist myself, so I work on this all over California and Nevada. And I know some people, so I felt like I could pick the brightest, the best and the brightest to come here to this county. You know, James Anthony has signed on as our land use attorney and our campaign consultant. He's a policy expert. He's brought with him Craig Litwin, who is a political consultant, campaign manager, and a former mayor. You might have heard of him. Of course, Kristen Nevedal, who's a nationally recognized cannabis policy expert and cultivation and environmental policy expert. And she's going to tell us a little more tonight about what that means. So I've asked each of them to kind of share with you a little bit about their part of what they're going to bring to our movement here and what they think the future looks like for us here in Lake County in cannabis. And then we'll move on to some questions and we'll close with a little bit of information about what the next step is for those of you that want to get involved either financially or with your time and sweat equity, if you would. So I'm going to start the panel discussion out of order. These guys picked their own seats. So I'm going to start tonight with Ron Green, who's going to talk a little bit about this archaic and draconian. I'm sorry, I took the draconian word fire out of this. About this archaic and ordinance they're trying to get passed.
Is this thing working? No.
Number 3. Right now, the yellow one.
Okay. Everybody can hear me?
Now.
Okay. Am I too close to this or not? All right. I think everybody. Want me to use the other one? I can go to the other
It's
one.
right below you. So there's a little-
That's all right.
All right, we'll try it again. Am I being heard now? Okay. Even though most of you probably know what's in the proposed draconian ordinance, lately I've been using the word Orwellian, which was suggested to me, which maybe is more appropriate. Whether it's Orwellian or draconian, it's really shitty. So anyway, what I'm going to do is just go through the provisions briefly, just so everybody knows. I think most of you do, but maybe some of you don't, because I heard some people asking questions about it. So what it does is it really hits the little person hard, first of all. If you've got an acre or less, it's not less than an acre, it's actually an acre or less, you can no longer grow, period. If you live in one of the towns around the county or in what they call the community development area, and the community development area is a large area that surrounds each town where the county anticipates the towns will eventually expand. And some of those parcels are 5 acres, 10 acres, even 20 acres, even though they're in the community development area. So if you live in the towns or in the community development area around the towns, you cannot grow, period. Not outdoors anyway. And that's what we're talking about here. On residential parcels larger than an acre, whether it's 100 acres or 500 acres, you're going to be limited to 6 plants outdoors. And that doesn't matter how many patients you have to live there. Collectives will not be allowed, period. You're just going to be allowed to grow 6 plants on your residential property, whether it's rural residential, rural lands, or whatever it is. And I would think that most people that grow in this county collectively are probably on rural residential, but that's just my guess. Only collectives and cooperatives would be allowed to grow more than 6 females, and they would be allowed to grow up to 48 females as a collective, but only on ag land parcels, 20 acres or more. There are very few of those available in this county. There are very few anyway, and there's very few available, and most of them are concentrated around the Findlay, Kelseyville area anyway. All outdoor grows would have to be screened from public view with a solid fence 6 to 8 feet with locked gates. So even if you're on 100 acres and you're growing 6 plants and nobody can see it, this would say you have to spend money and put up a ridiculous fence around it, which is just absurd. There's so much that's absurd in here. There's setbacks that would keep some people from growing, 75 feet from a property line, 150 feet from an off-site residence. On collectives, it would be on ag land, it would be 100 feet from a nearby property line and 200 feet from any off-site residence. Renters would not be able to grow without a notarized written permission from the landlord. Indoor grows are going to be regulated for the first time, and they may not exceed 100 square feet or use more than 1,200 watts. All right, hold on.
While we're here,
No cultivation will be allowed on vacant parcels without a legal residence, and individuals would have to grow on the property where they reside. And if it's a collective, one person would have to reside on the property. Again, it would only be on ag land. This would not allow contiguous parcels. Sometimes now people might have 10 acres with a house on it, with 10 acres next to it, and they would have to grow on the 10 acres that has the house on it. They wouldn't be able to grow on the vacant parcel, even if it's contiguous to their other parcel that has a residence on it. That makes no sense either. The ordinance just says it's exempt from CEQA, which is pretty ridiculous, and I think that's challengeable in the courts. They should do an additional study. This is going to force people indoors, which is obviously going to increase the carbon footprint. It's going to force people to grow on public lands, and it's also going to make a lot of, it's going to concentrate a lot of the grows on ag land around Kelseyville. So there's certainly environmental considerations that they're just ignoring. Greenhouses would be considered outdoors and not indoors. Right now, they're considering greenhouses as indoors. Greenhouses would be considered outdoors. No outdoor cultivation will be allowed within 1,000 feet of a school, park, church, child care facility, rehab facility, or youth-oriented facility. Right now, it's just 600 feet from a school, but they've increased it and added all these other things. One very troublesome part of the ordinance, it says, nothing herein shall limit the ability of enforcement officials from entering the property to conduct compliance inspections. The sheriff is authorized to determine the number and timing of inspections. And this goes for indoors and outdoors. And that's got some constitutional issues. They've also created criminal penalties, and I think that's got some constitutional issues because you're going to be legal under state law, but then if you violate the county ordinance, they can send you to jail. It'll be a misdemeanor or an infraction punishable by up to 6 months in jail if you violate the zoning ordinance, or a $1,000 fine. There's provisions for summary abatement. It's a little confusing, but it looks like they have a summary abatement where they would just abate you without any time whatsoever or give you 5 days. Those are, I think, legally questionable provisions. So that's about it. I mean, there's a lot of things that might be litigated in this, but litigation is probably not the best way to go, although maybe it's something we'll consider as an adjunct to political action in terms of a referendum and an initiative. But the courts have not been kind recently to the cannabis movement. The courts have come down with some pretty bad decisions and giving the counties and cities a lot of zoning power to do things within their zoning power. So, putting going with litigation, although that's a possibility, is probably not, you shouldn't put all your eggs in that basket, certainly. The political solution might be a lot better. So I think I'm just gonna wrap my part up with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. And the Fourth Amendment issues in that thing are one of the things that outrage me the most. Does anybody here know anyone who got their plants cut down this year? Show of hands, quite a few. Does anybody, any of those people that you know, have their plants cut down without an abatement notice or without a search warrant? That's illegal. That's a violation of our Fourth Amendment rights, and we have a sheriff who's running around doing that right now, unchecked and unregulated, the entire sheriff's department. Our next panelist, I'm sorry, I'm not going to get on my soapbox too much because I have a tendency to do that, especially when you start talking about violating rights and arresting my friends and seizing their assets. I have a problem with that. So the next person on our panel is James Anthony, who's going to outline some of the possible remedies that we have, political remedies. We're going to pass out these matrices, which may look a little confusing, but when he starts explaining them, it'll make sense.
Hi, I'm James Anthony. Can you hear me okay? I feel like I should be singing My Way or something. So it is true, I am a campaign consultant and a land use lawyer, and I have specialized exclusively in medical cannabis issues since January 2006, which is going on 8 years now. When I started in Oakland, and I worked with dispensaries. Because that's what there was, and I had been an Oakland city attorney. I'd been shutting down crack houses and liquor stores. And right at that time, 2005, 2006, dispensaries started popping up all over the state. And city attorneys would do what I used to do. They would send them a mean letter. And you'd be surprised how often when you're in government, if you send somebody a mean letter, they'll just fold. Like 90-95% of your cases, that's it. But I would advise my clients that, well, that's a mean letter, but it's not a court order, so let them sue us, right? And so I did a bunch of that kind of litigation, but then I decided, permitting was the way to go with dispensaries. I did some permits in Oakland, I did Harborside, I did a couple in San Francisco. I have a medical marijuana business license signed by the sheriff coroner of Kern County, unincorporated Bakersfield. Of course, that sheriff lost an election and then things got ugly. So that's what I've been doing since January 2006. And then, when we were doing permits, I thought, well, what we need is more local regulation. So then I started working on campaigns in Berkeley and San Jose, working with city councils and boards of supervisors if they were going to be reasonable give us some rules and we'll follow them. Or we'll go to the voters, either way. And then I wrote a tax in Oakland, which I sometimes kind of wish I hadn't opened that bottle, but now there's cannabis taxes all over the place. Before we go into this document, I just want to say that 8 years ago, if you had called me to my law office in Oakland and said that you were growing marijuana, I would have just laughed at you, because everybody knows that medical cannabis just falls like manna from heaven, and it just shows up on the shelf in a little bottle or Mylar baggie in the dispensaries. That's where cannabis comes from. It's not grown anywhere. Don't be ridiculous. I don't know where you got this number. Don't call here anymore. But then with the first Obama term, 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, more and more cultivators started wanting to come out into the light, maybe, be regulated, pay taxes, have a bank account, crazy stuff. And so, I started working with them and talking with them and giving them the advantages and the disadvantages of that, because, you may solve one problem and you may open up a whole mess of other problems. And here we are, we're beyond Mendocino, we're beyond Yuba, we're beyond El Dorado County, we're beyond Butte County. And what we're looking at here on this piece of paper, that first page is what we're going to look at, and it continues on to the back of it. The second page is nothing but Lake County zoning on both sides. So you can take that home in case you're having trouble sleeping tonight. You can go down into the details of Lake County zoning. But on the first page, what we have down the side are, let me just say this. I'm talking about this because I'm talking about running an initiative. I'm a lawyer, but let me tell you two things that I'm not doing and I won't talk about. I'm not doing any lobbying in Lake County. It appears to be too late for that, and there's some good people here who have relationships, Stan Rush, with the Board of Supervisors that have been talking to them for years, and apparently we just can't get through to them. I'm also not going to talk about litigation. Other people, other lawyers may have litigation strategies. Ron mentioned a couple. I am not going to litigate one of these cases. I don't have any objection to anybody else doing it, but also litigation strategy is not discussed in open meetings. If you've ever been down at the Board of Supervisors, litigation comes up, boom, they clear the room, and they disappear in the back with their lawyers, and that's where you talk about litigation strategy. So, what would an initiative look like? Well, in the first three columns, you've got cultivation ordinances that have occurred or are about to occur here in Lake County. The first one in the first column there is Measure D, which you may recall was out there after the referendum in 2012, and then it ran into this. I don't know if any of you remember getting this in the mail. This is a nasty hit piece. This is how campaigns are won and lost. Little things like this. That was Measure D. In the second column, you have what we have now, right? The urgency ordinance, which is set to expire coming up July 5th of this coming year. And then that third column is what Ron was just talking about, the proposed draft that's sitting in front of the Board of Supervisors right now, and that, I don't know, I suspect they may pass on Tuesday. You realize when you get over there on Tuesday, they're not hearing any more public comment, right? They're done. They did that here on Tuesday in this room, and they closed the public hearing, correct? Public hearing is closed, that's it. They're not going to hear anybody else next week. Next week, they're going to sit up there, and they're going to talk, go back and forth, and then they'll pass it, kill it, stall it, amend it, whatever. But they are done listening to the voters of Lake County.
They could decide to reopen.
They could decide to reopen the public hearing, but it does seem unlikely, and I don't think there's a procedural reason to force it open. They'd have to do it out of the goodness of their hearts. So, obviously, we're not going to write an initiative together in this room. But let me just say that my view of writing initiatives, there's two things. There's the strategy side and the content side. Strategy is about timing and warfare and what are they doing and do we have any opposition and how much money do we have and all of that stuff. That's the fun part. But you got to know what you're doing. And that's the content. And here's the thing. If you look at the top of my initiative column there on the right side, it says a reasonable medical amount plus community voter polling, that will equal victory, right? We all know what we want, maybe we just want to be left alone. Those days are over. There's going to be regulation. The question is, what kind of regulation is there going to be? Can we try to help them sort out the good guys and the bad guys? Because obviously there's some legitimate issues related to outsized, illegal, non-medical cultivation. Apparently the rest of the country still likes marijuana, and California is a good place to grow it. And as far as I'm concerned, the ultimate solution to that problem is just legalize marijuana nationally. Now we don't have to worry about people in the forest growing, 1,000, 10,000 plants. So we're not there yet. In the meantime, we got to help the Lake County Board of Supervisors figure out how to focus their enforcement resources on outsized, illegal, non-medical problem grows and leave reasonable-sized medical grows alone or regulate them minimally. So there will be compromises here, and at the moment, I'm hoping that whatever money we're able to raise in CABIC, the Community Alliance to Ban Illegal Cannabis Cultivation, CABICC, Community Alliance to Ban Illegal Cannabis Cultivation. This seems like a perfectly reasonable proposal that we should be able to get people behind. And what we want to look at is whatever money is raised there, let's get some language together and let's poll it. And let's pull some messaging, and let's pull some opposition messaging, right? So when this comes down again, because it will come down again, if we run an initiative, it is going to be dirty. It will be this dirty and it will be worse. And we need to be ready with both positive messaging and responses to negative messaging. So on the row labels are your kind of basic issues. So your first one there is the zones allowed. And again, that whole second sheet is covered in zones, but basically it breaks down to, in a residential zone, you want to be able to grow for yourself and your family or a small collective, And I don't know what number that is, but we're going to get to plant numbers in the next row. On larger rural parcels where agriculture is a permitted activity, it would seem to me that a medium-sized medical collective is appropriately located there. And, that would probably be outside of the so-called community growth boundaries, although, those also include some larger lots. So we need to think about that carefully. The second row, plant numbers. Plant numbers. Okay, plant numbers always remind me of how many dogs is 100 pounds? Right? I need 100 pounds of dogs. How many dogs do I need? Right? It's that stupid of a question. Plant numbers are a god-awful stupid way to regulate anything. Right? And the reason we end up with plant numbers and weird things like the magic number 99, right? It's completely arbitrary. 99 comes out of federal sentencing guidelines, and at 100 plants, you got a 5-year mandatory minimum. The U.S. attorney has maximum leverage on you. You're going to cut a deal. You're going to do some time. Below that, they got no leverage. They're going to have to go to trial. They're going to cut a deal. You're probably not going to do any time. That is no way to regulate agriculture or to regulate land use. It's just ridiculous. So the problem is that if you do something logical like canopy, right, or square footage or acreage, the experience is that it does not poll well. But Lake County might be an exception to the statewide polling results. The statewide polling results is that plant numbers, people understand that, they like it, 10, 12, 30, whatever. But you start talking about square footage, 100, 600, 1,000. People are scared of square footage, and they're certainly scared of acreage. But Lake County could be an exception. It may be that the voters in Lake County are sufficiently sophisticated that they would accept a square footage. Okay, people are shaking their heads. I don't have to poll. I just got my poll right here in the row. Okay then, plant numbers it is. I'm also running around in Mariposa County. Mariposa County has a cultivation ordinance coming up in the next month or so, where they are trying to limit it to no more than 12 plants on any parcel anywhere in the county. Mariposa's across the valley, on the other side of Merced, going up into Yosemite, right? There ain't, I think there's like 12,000 voters or something in Mariposa. Right, and we got Butte. In preparing this matrix, I looked at Butte again, I looked at El Dorado County again, I looked at Yuba County again. They all actually have semi-functional ordinances that have passed in the last year or so that we're going to see, how those work out, and that's going to be very useful. We also have the Mendocino model, which that the feds shut down, but which was functional for at least 2 or 3 years there. The problem with Mariposa is they're following the lead of Merced and Tehama, which are not good. They're a lot like what we're looking at right now in Lake County at the Board of Supervisors. Anyway, this top chart, this matrix goes on with whatever random suggestions I may have made. Those numbers 36 and 96 are just Mariposa County says 12, so I'm just multiplying. Well, 3 patients, 3 times 12, that'll be 36. 8 patients, 8 times 12, that'll be 96. More magic numbers that are somewhat arbitrary, but maybe workable either with the Board of Supervisors or with the voters. The other issues just going down the left-hand side, and I don't think Michael wants me up here all night, but you can see this stuff. I think we're going to have some question cards for people to write down questions later so that the panel can respond. I've got residency clauses, that's an issue. Maybe that makes sense, in a denser neighborhood where folks are right next to each other in small house lots and there's an empty lot. You don't want that grown out in the middle of a bunch of houses, but obviously out in the country on larger lots, agriculture is often done without somebody living right there, so that's something to think about. Sensitive use proximities, I just don't know who it is exactly who gets hurt because there's a plant growing in the yard, but this is always an issue in California, so we are stuck with 600 feet from schools, and maybe we could pick some others that are sort of inoffensive, that don't have a huge impact but sound good or something. But you do have to watch those carefully. For instance, in a town like Oakland, there's a lot of churches. You go 1,000 feet from churches and suddenly you've wiped out the whole city. So you need to be careful with that stuff. On the second page, the flip side of that first page is the last couple of initiative issues there. There are different ways to approach permitting. You can have a kind of a complaint-driven system where, it's fine until somebody complains about it, and then we've got some rules, and we come by, and if you're not following the rules, you got a problem. Or you could do some kind of pre-inspection. You can have a compliance officer. You can have a ministerial system where if you meet the checklist, right? Here's my recommendations for my collective members. Here's my drawing of my garden. Here's my fencing. Here's my signed affidavit that I will comply with the best practices. We should have gone first. She'll talk about that. That's it. If you meet the checklist and your property is appropriately zoned and sized and the setbacks are good and the proximities are good, bam, you get your annual permit, you pay your fee. Maybe there's an inspection system, maybe not. Or maybe it's, how about this? Call me, make an appointment before you want to come over up inside my house or my yard and poke around, and I'll be happy to schedule something with you. That was how Mendocino worked. And Mendocino, not only was it not necessarily the sheriff doing the inspection, it could have been some independent third-party inspector. He had 3 of them. You scheduled it, you paid them a fee, they came by once in the beginning when you're getting ready, and then after you plant it, then kind of in the middle of the season, maybe one time right before harvest. They did it more the first year, and the second year they were down to maybe 2 inspections. And that worked, it didn't. The other thing that was important with that system was legal water. You got to show that you got legal water, okay? So that is a legitimate concern is the environmental impact on the watersheds. You know, if people don't store water, everybody comes in the summer and hits those pumps, you kill that stream. You know, you can't put 150 grows on one little stream, it's not gonna work. The setback issue, you know, outdoor restrictions. You know, indoor, I don't know what to do about indoor. I mean, there's a reason people are indoor in the first place, right? And, you know, I don't think anybody wants to burn the house down, you know? So I would suggest that you consider that. You could try to have some kind of reasonable quantity, and if people are happy with 1,200 in the house unregulated, maybe that works. But above that, if you try to regulate, I think it's problematic. So I don't know, there's something to be said for silence. You can do some kind of fees, you can do some kind of taxes. If you care, in California, those things are different. Fees are supposed to only recover the cost of the regulation. Taxes generate revenue, you know, extra money for the county government to spend. Although sometimes if the regulatory fees are a little high, they probably get some revenue there, but they're not supposed to. It can get tricky. And then the last thing is, you know, how do you do your enforcement? Who's in charge? It doesn't make any sense to me to have the sheriff in charge of a land use ordinance, right? The sheriff doesn't know anything about land use. It's, even though there's misdemeanors in there, you know, you don't run your zoning code by arresting people for misdemeanors and you know, prosecuting them at the expense of the county and putting them in jail for 6 years. It just makes no sense, right? You have your inspections, you have your compliance, you know, people come out, they check on you. If you're out of compliance, would you please get into compliance? If it's really a problem, then you take whatever administrative action, and you should be able to control it that way. So it makes more sense to me to have a community development, you know, the planning director could be in charge of code enforcement, or you could set up a separate officer, have a community, a cannabis enforcement officer, something along those lines. Very interesting initiative language, and then I'm going to shut up, in South Lake Tahoe. South Lake Tahoe, Steve Covey, gotta love Steve, always at the edge. Steve created a new misdemeanor for any city employee who cooperates with the feds or even with the state in any kind of cannabis abatement, right? So we don't know if that's constitutional or not. Lake County, right, is probably one of the few counties where if we put something like that in, or, you know, my thought is, you know, any government official who interferes with the ordinance, you know, or acts in contravention to the ordinance would be punishable as a misdemeanor. Lake County is probably one of the few counties where we might get the district attorney to charge the sheriff with a misdemeanor, just for the fun of it. And I don't know who's going to arrest the sheriff, but, you know, we're going to have all kinds of fun with that. So anyway, I know that's a lot, and I apologize, but I wanted to get that out to people. And as I say, the last 2 pages are just the specific zones and some details about them in Lake County. Sorry about all of that, Michael. Take it away.
Just a quick, thank you, James Anthony. Just a quick straw poll. Who here would like to see an ordinance where we can file charges against the sheriff for abusing our civil rights? Okay, so we have our answer there. Yeah, and you know, there's a scientific way, there's a science to politics. There's a scientific way to determine what we can and cannot put in the ordinance. And that science, part of that science is polling, and it requires spending some money. We're going to spend some money on polling this time around, and we're going to know just how much of an ordinance we can write here and get passed with the people of Lake County to do our business the way we should. So, next up, I've got Kristen from Animal Growers Association. She's here not in that capacity tonight, so I'm careful how I say it. And she's going to talk about what she does.
All right. Well, thanks for being here and caring about this issue. The second page of zoning, this is really minor units coming out here. You know, in 2009, we saw Mendocino running the 9.31 zip tie exemption program, which allowed for collective cultivation of over 25 plants and up to 99 plants. And Humboldt County, where I live, didn't have an ordinance, so we started looking at what our options were and really leaned heavily towards square footage. The reason why is cannabis is an agricultural crop that's produced for human consumption, and a lot of the opposition that's happening around cannabis production, and primarily outdoor cannabis production, has to do with the potential for environmental impacts, right? I mean, currently we have cannabis is likely to be the #1 cash crop in the state, right? With grape production as #2. And how we can expect to have this, #1 agricultural crop in the state not be rearing its head in environmental impacts when there's no regulation. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. No regulation, no controls, no best management practices. And with sensible policy, we have the opportunity to implement some really nice standards in how cultivation is handled, what kind of best management practices people are using, and also educate the public. And part of what we've worked on is doing just that. We did look at the really ugly press that outdoor cultivators have been getting and put together this guide that tries to address those issues. And the big primary ones, the grading issues, the heavy nutrient loads, the pesticides, the rodenticides, the water issues. And, part of what, like James said, when we talk about the plant sizes or we talk about a plant count-based program, we have a really hard time managing resources because, like we all know, one plant can take up a 4x4 space or it can take up a 10x10 space. Obviously, the 10x10 plant is going to use significantly more resources than a smaller plant in a 4x4. But, we need to work with what we have too, and with where we can go. Some of what I really encourage people to do is really look at their practices and focus on how they can be a good example to the neighbors around them, because really a lot of this pushback isn't happening because of the patient collectives that are being mindful about how they're producing medicine. It's happening because of an aspect of taking advantage of California's lack of regulation, right? And so when we look at how to write an initiative and move a cultivation policy piece forward, we have to remember that we have to really address some of the issues, and primarily those issues are happening in the closer-knit residential neighborhoods. Part of the reason for looking at the zoning when we talk about agriculture, and I think part of what the county did in the setup for their current ordinance was in some ways treat it like agriculture, but treat it like very intensive agriculture. I mean, in Lake County, single-family residential districts and two-family residential districts don't have agricultural rights, no matter what that lot size is. And that's a little hard to deal with when we're looking at how zoning plays into a cultivation piece. Everything, once we get into the suburban reserve districts, the rural residential districts, and beyond into the rural land districts and then the ag-specific and TPZ, all of these properties have substantial ag rights, right? And they really hold the potential and the proper location for collective cultivation. But at the same time, we need to balance the needs of the patient in their homes and in small residences. So that's where we're going to have to play with some plant count numbers and try to figure out through polling and having more conversation how we draw those lines of what plant numbers are allowed in what areas. So we're going to spend some time looking at that and getting some input and having some more conversation. I do also want to say, when we looked at Mendocino's program, Mendocino's exemption for more than 25 plants, the first year it started out on parcels over 5 acres. And it was having some challenges with neighbors, and they amended it the second year that that program ran and bumped it up to 10-acre parcels, unless you're on a 5-acre parcel that was surrounded all by 5-acre or larger parcels. So, maybe we can play with some of how that works, right, by looking at what people have done in the past. Additionally, when we look at the ordinance and an initiative and how to move forward, again, we have to be mindful of the environmental and the potential environmental impacts that we're hearing about. So legal water, they're coming. I mean, and by them, I mean Fish and Wildlife is teaming up with law enforcement in multiple counties here in California, deputized with Mendocino County, which means that that sheriff does not need a warrant to come onto that property because Fish and Wildlife has some of the broadest field search capabilities of all the agencies. So if they suspect an environmental issue, they can come onto your properties. Not with Fish and Wildlife. Fish and Wildlife, if they have reason to believe that you have an environmental violation, they can enter onto your property without a warrant. And so they are going to start to assert their water draw rights and the 1600 permits. And then we do have some movement and activity happening with the water boards that are really seriously looking at considering cannabis as part of their agricultural discharge program. So I think, as we move forward, we're going to have to look at how to address those issues because they're out there and they're coming more and more into the realm of cannabis production. And I'm going to just say one more thing, and that's that, all of this, the conversations here, the polling is so incredibly important, right? All of it's going to take some funding, and that's why the PAC has been established. And I encourage you guys to check these out, and with your donation to the PAC, I think Michael's handing these out to people. So take the time to look at them. They just have really simple, helpful information that will help you not be kind of the target as much, right? So when we can do a little bit of self-regulation, it does help to take some of the pressure off, but it also gives an example of how things can be done properly. So we need to be mindful of that as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it over so we can get to some questions in a little bit.
Well, if the sheriff does come to your garden, you have that book and you say, no, I'm not abusing my environment, I'm not abusing the land that I farm on, I follow these best practices, and I'm not a criminal. How many people here care about the land that they grow on? How many people here care about the environment and preserving what we have in Lake County for those of us who live in Lake County? Yeah, me too. Are you guys criminals? Is anybody here a criminal? I'm not a criminal. And I don't want to be treated like one either. So next on the list, that's why we're here. Can you write your questions down?
The criminals are not here.
Right, the criminals are not here, and we want to show them the door in Lake County. If you came here to take our resources, to take our water, to abuse our dirt, to pollute our soil, get out. Go home. Go back to where you're from. These are Lake County resources, and we're going to use them responsibly, and we're going to use them to better our quality of life here in Lake County, and for patients all over California. So our next panel speaker is Terry Larson, who's our PRC advocate, and she's going to talk a little bit about the role that the PRC is going to play in what we're doing here.
Thank you. Can y'all hear me okay? Oh yeah, I can hear myself. All right, well, good evening, and thank you so much for coming out. It's great to have such a great turnout for something like this, because it's the power of the people, and we've got to move. The Patients' Rights Committee is a new group that has been formed that is representing patients, caregivers, and the small farmers. So if you are any one of these, please contact us. We have a Facebook page where there's a group there if you're on Facebook. If you're not, there's people in the back there taking names and addresses and information, and just make sure that they have their information directly related to the PRC. So we would love to be able to connect with all the people that are willing to reach out and touch their communities with this issue and help use our grassroots power to make change here in Lake County. And that's what we need to do. So I'm not going to go on in long things, we've got a lot to get to, but those of you that know me, know what's happening, this is for real, and those of you that don't will find out. So I would like to give you my telephone number at my office, which is 701-6416, and you can leave a message for us there. We will be in the office tomorrow as well. We're located in Lower Lake, which is right at the corner of 29 and 53. We will have an office space available for this group there for meetings and everything else. So there is a very organized group that's already in place, and we want to have all of you join us there so we have more power and more ability to make this happen. Thank you.
Can you repeat the number, please?
Sure, it's 701-6416, and my name is spelled Terririlarsen. You can go to Facebook and friend me there, and we'll add you to the PRC group.
And so far, we've established a lot of our communication through Facebook. So if you if you're on Facebook, you can search any one of these names. You're going to find somebody. You're going to find the Patients' Right Committee. You're going to find me. Send us a friend request. We'll get you plugged in. We'll get you involved on Facebook. You guys know that social media is where it all starts these days. Everybody's online.
And if you don't have Facebook or you're not online, just let us know, and we'll put you either in an email list or a phone tree, so one way or the other you won't be left out.
Right. So, and our last, our second to last panel speaker, wait, did I miscount? Well, our next panel speaker is John McClear from Americans for Safe Access.
Hi, we're here just to make sure that all the patients have their rights. We voted on it. We need to keep our rights, and safe access is very important to sick people. I also want to say we have our meetings in the Oaks every third Wednesday of the month at 6 o'clock at the Moose Lodge. So I'd like to see a lot of you people come down and let's shake the county up. We have our rights. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And we've asked Joe Fernandez to say a few words.
I'm here to let you know that, I'm very, very involved with our environment. These people, we're so fortunate to have the people here, but we got to remember that this fight's not an easy fight. It's not a cheap fight. Everybody should be able to contribute to our fight. Everybody should be able to clean their act up and protect our environment, because I'm very much 100%, against people destroying. And I've seen people that say, I care about my environment, I care about this, I care about that. But the minute that a tree is in their way of the ganja plant, they want to chop that tree down. And you got to remember, when you do these things, it gives the people that we're fighting against, it gives them that extra tool to be, to go against it. So you got to remember, we need to educate everyone. The people that know how to protect their environment needs to go to their brother or their sister and say, you know what, we need to protect, you need to quit doing what you're doing. How can I help you to educate you? And like I said, I've been involved for a long time on medical marijuana, and we've got to remember that we have to fight, and we need to help Michael financially and morally to support this cause. And it's about time that I think we need to get involved. Everybody says, I want to get involved, but the minute the ball starts looking good, we drop back. And that's exactly when we get attacked the most. So we need to stay and not quit. We need to keep going forward. And like I said, we need to educate people on the environment. We need to educate our supervisors. I'm not here to bash no supervisor, no politician, because they can be educated just as well as you can be educated in the public. Because I know, like I said, I know a lot of people that grow medical marijuana that are doing things they're shouldn't be doing. So in order for them to learn, we need to also learn. So if we don't, we need to work together. We need the politicians, we also need the public. And until we got to quit fighting against one another. And, we got to carry each other a little way in order to be successful. Thank you.
Good job. Joe, as you may know, was involved with Measure D, and I just want to clarify for everybody, we have included all of the people who are involved in Measure D in what we're doing going forward, because we want to learn from the knowledge that we gathered through that experience, going into the new experience, so that we know that we're better directed on the direction to go in. And our next panel speaker is Dan Rush. Woo! Woo, Dan Rush.
How you guys doing? I'm the goddamn union guy. Okay, so when I talk, it's okay to go, yeah, and woo-hoo, and we're gonna do it. Who wants to win? Yeah. I want to win. I love this county. I have a cabinet and we have property in this county. It's been in our family since 1890. You think we're happy when we see somebody come and clear cut? Hell no. I want to throw them out, just like Michael said. You see we're happy when we see somebody, you think we're happy when we see people show up with trailers and pit bulls and guns and dogs and all that stuff, and I've got my 6-year-old grandson next door? Not in my neighborhood, okay? And that's what we're up against. See, we're getting blamed for what everybody else is doing. So what do we have to do? Just like Joe said, we have to get up and we have to educate them and we have to teach them who we are. We are Lake County, right? Okay, and everybody else isn't. So we have to help them understand. We're not the criminals. We don't have the pit bulls, the machine guns, the trailers. We're not out in the parks, okay? We're in homes. How many people here are patients? How many people want to grow medicine for yourself to take care of yourself? How many people want to grow medicine for a collective or a cooperative or somebody who can't do it for themselves? Who wants to? One day we're going to build real jobs here. We're going to fix the lake. We're going to build warehouses. We're going to have a label that says Lake County, sun-grown, outdoor. James Anthony, we've worked with him all over the country. Everybody here heard of the Oakland Ordinance? The matrix of the Oakland Ordinance, designed right here. Everybody heard of canopy count and outdoor growing and sun-grown and the phrase sun-grown? Krista Nevedal, right here, okay? We've got ASA here. We've got UFCW here. We've got the Green Farmers here. By the way, John Brosnan from the Green Farmers is here. How you doing, John? And thank you for coming.
The Godfather.
The Godfather. Who's sitting in the crowd tonight, making sure that we're all going to do right. We've got Carol here. We've got Jerry here from ASA, some of the founders. Some of the people that started the one thing that we want to forget, Measure D. Everybody remember Measure D? We lost. Do you know why? Because we couldn't all get along. Can you look next door to the person next to you and say, hey, hi, you can count on me? Can you do it? Can you look at the person next to you and say, hi, you can count on me? Okay? Because that's what's going to happen. We all got to count on each other. Some people just want to grow medicine for home, and that's okay. Some people want to do it commercially and collectively, and that's okay. Some people want to do it cooperatively. That's okay. And we're going to have a structured campaign that works from a matrix, okay? Anybody shows up here and says, I've got an initiative and I know it's going to win, and they don't have any polling, and they didn't develop it on anything other than if I get to grow 99 plants, I can make more money, they're not real, okay? These are how real campaigns are done. Terry and Pete, local grassroots people, they're publishers, they have a radio show, they have a magazine, and they're here for the grassroots. They're here for the smaller folks. They're going to be organizing committees and community meetings for the home growers. And come to Terry and Pete's place when we do that. There are some commercial and collective people here, and you don't have to raise your hands. You're represented too. There are patients here. Patients are represented too. The one thing that we all have to do is not cannibalize each other, okay? The real political world calls us the cannibal movement because we constantly cannibalize each other, okay? We can't do that this time. And we've got to do what James said. We've got to get some polling. We've got to do what Kristen said. We've got to write some policy until it's coming out of our ears. By the way, Lauren Vasquez is here, the world famous fired up lawyer. Hi, Lauren. and CCPR member. Teresa Daniello is here from Ohio. We've got Ron Green here, one of the originals. You can tell by that full head of hair. Ron's been in the movement for a year or two. We've got Michael Horner here, who is one hell of a community organizer. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having the balls to stand up to the sheriff and say, we're not going to take it anymore. Thank you. Thank you for having the guts. Pete and Terry, thanks for having the guts to say this is where it stops. But this is the other thing we got to do. Now we have to focus on who we are. And what that means is message. Who are we? Okay? We got to stay on message. Every time I mention somebody's name that's our enemy, we're giving them power. We don't even talk about them. To hell with them. What we talk about, our initiative, our team, our goals, our family, our community, our county. Everybody else, leave it alone. If you got a story to tell, send it to Terry. Okay? Okay. Let me finish.
You can let him finish, yeah.
Okay, if you got a story to tell, send it to Terry and Pete so that they can publish it. Because every time we get on a microphone and we go, I gotta have my medicine, or I'm gonna die, or I'm gonna have this, or I'm gonna have that, we're talking to deaf ears. Okay? The supervisors are deaf ears, but as Joe pointed out, they're learning. Okay? We had a victory the other night. They put off for a week the vote that they were going to take the other night. You know why? They wanted to see what happened here tonight. And there are people here tonight that are here to report back to them. Okay? And what we want you to report back, we're together. This community is together. We know what we're doing. We've got a good, strong team, and we're going to come and kick your ass. And then we're going to join the union. So, I just want to say, you know what, I love this county. Let's be together. Let's be family. Let's figure out who we are. Let's stick together. Don't cannibalize each other. Don't cannibalize anything outside. These are your leaders. Come to your leaders and talk to them. If you've got a message or information, bring it to your crew. Because your crew is going to bring it to you, just like we're doing tonight. That's what this is about. We're all talking about what we're doing so we can all stay together. By the way, the mom here.
Oh, yeah.
He's becoming a national hero in the medical cannabis movement, and somebody that the union plans on working with closely. So that's what I got to say tonight. Let's stick together. Let's raise some money. Let's keep everybody going. Help Terry. Help Pete. Help Michael. Help Joe. And let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry, we're going to go to a closing. Your final say at the end after questions, if that works for you, want to say. Right. So, I'm sorry. Please write your questions on a card, and then we'll address them to the panel. Yeah, it's not part of our program, and we are on a tight time schedule. We have to be out of here by 8 o'clock. So, please, we do welcome your questions. We want your questions, and if you write them on a card, I'll collect them, and I'll direct them at the appropriate panel member. I want you guys to leave here informed, so when your friends ask you what's going on with that thing, you guys can say, hey, there's some people who are working on this, and these guys are organized, and they got it together, and they went and found the best and brightest in the nation and brought them here into Lake County so that we could pass an initiative that is that is fair to everybody, that is good for the community, that is good for the economy, that is good for patients. And we're not going to mire ourselves in the details of this ordinance. We're going to employ a scientific method of polling to come up with an ordinance that we know we can pass. And there will be compromises along the way. It may not be exactly as you envisioned it, but when it's done, it will be something we could have never imagined. It will be a great thing for Lake County. So I hope that everybody here wants to get involved. Is everybody written down questions? Who's had any questions? Okay. If we can collect those and get them this way, my volunteers and my helpers. And we may not get a chance to get through all of these tonight, but we might run out of time. But I'm going to do my best. And if I take them out of order, I might skip to something that's more poignant. I don't know. But we're going to do our best to address everybody's questions. And again, I know that all of you guys have opinions on this. And your opinion is important. And that's why we've organized the stakeholders here. These are your institutions. Normal, ASA, the PRC. These are where you get a chance to get involved and have your voice heard by an organization who will talk to everybody else. So the ASA has a place where they have meetings, and I'm going to give him John another opportunity to announce where those meetings are and how you can get involved with ASA. The PRC will also tell us how you can get involved with the PRC and so on, so that we know where we go from here to do more. Any more questions?
The revolution is being televised.
It is being televised. We are being videoed right now. And you got my good side, right, Pete? Thank you. It seems that there are hidden interests behind the BOS. Why is that not addressed? I don't know if there's anybody on this panel that can effectively answer that question.
I'll pass it down. What I wanted to say just quickly about that is there are interests there. They're big money interests. And it's in the BOS's interest to keep them happy as opposed to us, because we don't represent anything financially to them. The other organizations or businesses or corporations that are out there are influencing these gentlemen, making them think that it's a tourism issue and a winery issue, and that's where we should be focusing our energy in Lake County. And I believe that that's something that we need to teach them, that there's more to Lake County than just that.
Yeah, there's an education issue there for sure. Yeah, I think it's been answered. Is there any option available for people, by the people, to get Rick Crowell fired or removed? By straw poll, who would like Rick Crowell to go find a new job? And I think I can answer that question in that we've got some of the best policy and land use experts possible on this panel. These guys know more in their pinky than Rick Crowell has in his entire being. So
Rick Crowell serves at the discretion of the Board of Supervisors. The only way to get rid of Rick Crowell is to change the Board of Supervisors. Yeah. And that's the only If 3 members of the Board of Supervisors don't like him, he's gone. It's that simple.
Right. And just a comment on the Board of Supervisors angle. You know, the CABIC, the PAC Community Alliance to ban illegal cannabis cultivation is not going to stop at getting a good ordinance. It's not going to stop at running a referendum. It's not going to stop at running an initiative in 2014. The CABIC is going to elect the next 2 seats on the Board of Supervisors. The CABIC is going to elect our next sheriff. And if those people are in our position in this community, then they're not going to have a job. And in 2016, there'll be 3 more seats open on the board. And the CABIC is still going to be here, and it's still going to be raising money, and it's still going to be a community force to make sure that we have people that understand the position of patients and have a realistic idea of what the Lake County economy is. Yes.
Everyone to know we've analyzed the meeting from Tuesday, and at this point, we haven't done a full analysis, but at this point, we caught Rick Crowell in 5 lies already. Okay, so I want to know why the BOS allows a liar to continue to work for them. That's right.
We're holding our leaders accountable for sure. How do we, what's our plan? I'm gonna paraphrase this question a little bit. I hope the writer doesn't get upset with me for doing that, but I think it's a very important question. How do we expect to make this ordinance more enforceable? I'm gonna direct that question at James Anthony.
Enforceable in terms of, you don't want the sheriff just disregarding it and doing whatever he wants to do. Is that what we're talking about? Well, and this is where I think the South Lake Tahoe example is very interesting, but I want to take that specifically to actions in contravention of the ordinance, that those should be both chargeable offenses and possibly a basis for a civil cause of action. Now, it's a little tricky to do that at the county level. And I need to do more legal research, and my suspicion is that this may be an open question of law, right? Because I mean, especially if we're trying to set up a misdemeanor for county officials who act in contravention of this ordinance or in contravention of the rights recognized by a permit, right? Say you've done your duty and you've got your zip tie, your permit or whatever, and you're inspected and your water's legal, and you're all good, and the sheriff comes in and says, well, I don't care, I'm taking them, you don't like it, fine, sue me, right? So that might not be a bad idea, to build in some kind of civil mechanism for going after the sheriff. The misdemeanor mechanism, I am not entirely convinced it's constitutional, but we may not know. And I think that putting it in there is one way to find out. So I've heard that issue over and over again, that people are concerned about the sheriff disregarding even the current ordinance. And it's something that we're going to look at very seriously and try to come up with the best model. We're in uncharted territory here. So we're going to try to build structures. There's an email address on the bottom of that matrix on the first page, which will that'll come straight to me and Michael. And if you have thoughts along those lines, I encourage you to send them in. I think making that clear statement is hopefully going to start to tilt the public, the context in which the sheriff feels like it's totally cool for him to go out and do that, and that there will be no repercussions, because I know that the recall effort fell short by a few signatures, but hey, we're going to be out there with clipboards, that's also an option. So it is something that is very high on our agenda, and thank you for reminding me.
Can I just ask a question, just to clarify something? I'm a doctor, I have a lot of patients that are going to be happy. It's procedural. Let's say on Tuesday they pass it. Because, we're talking about a far future about this ordinance. Right. But I'm more interested in next week and the following week and the following week. So let's say they pass it and it then becomes law.
So I can answer that in 5 seconds. First of all, from my point of view as a campaign consultant, November 2014, it starts now. It is not the far distant future. Far distant future is maybe 2016, but let me tell you exactly what happens. December 17th, which is next Tuesday, they pass it. It becomes effective on January 21st, I believe it is the next, no, they pass it through first reading. Second reading is January 21st. It becomes effective 30 days thereafter. Once the clerk of the board certifies it, right, puts its little stamp on it, we will be standing by with referendum pamphlets printed up and ready to go with signature boxes. We get the certified copy, we drop it in there, we crank out as many pamphlets as we need, and we are in the street that day collecting signatures on the referendum. We get the signatures for the referendum. You guys have done that. You know how this works. You get those signatures within 30 days, and that law does not go into effect. It's done, right? Until either the election or until the board itself repeals. So that's an easy no-brainer for the status quo.
So,
Right, so I understand. If the practical thing is maintaining the status quo. Maintaining the status quo is easy. We take referendum, we maintain the status quo until July 5th. Right, and July 5th, the urgency ordinance expires. There's a possibility that we just let them make the urgency ordinance permanent, right? If everybody's kind of cool with that. Meanwhile, we've got an initiative on the ballot. So we are maintaining the status quo. We are not worried about whatever the Board of Supervisors does next Tuesday. We are moving the whole issue forward, okay? We are improving the status quo. We're not worried about going backwards with their ridiculous ordinance. Cannabis is going to be legal for adult use in this state and in this country, not in our lifetimes, but in this decade. This is not the time for the Board of Supervisors to backslide.
And I apologize for not including more of our strategy in my portion of the presentation, but there is a very well put, thought out strategy and timeline to this thing that has already started. We have been lobbying, myself, Dan Rush, Ron Green have been lobbying your Board of Supervisors to make a better decision, a more educated decision. We think with a little bit of success, giving the reaction to your guys' comments on Tuesday and postponing it, we don't expect the board to do anything spectacular. We don't expect them to come back with any sort of anything that makes real sense for the long-term future of Lake County, for lack of a better word, and we're going to move forward
Michael.
as if.
Sorry, I just got to make one thing clear. I haven't been lobbying. I've been educating.
Oh.
Okay. The other thing is I made a comment about commercialized industry, and like James pointed out, that's when we achieve state regulations that allow a commercialized industry. Until that becomes law, we're just here to make sure the patients have their medicine. Okay. Sorry for that.
Please, if you have, I see hands coming up, and I know you have more questions. I'm still taking the cards, so please write them down on the card if you have a question.
Michael, let me just add one thing. If we get the signatures for a referendum, they have two choices. They can rescind it or put it on the ballot. That's it. Those are their two choices.
How many things?
June or November?
What's that?
When would it go on the ballot? June or November?
James, do they have time to get it on in June? We're talking about the referendum. They're on it.
Okay, so referendum timing and initiative timing are really tricky. There's a bunch of things that the Board of Supervisors can do to stall. They can stall for a month by ordering a report. There are and I don't know when their meetings are, right? The thing has to come back for a regular meeting for them to take certain actions on it. So, if they don't have a regular meeting or they decide to take the month off, there's all kind of weird games that can happen with a timeline. So I'd have to sit down and do the math, but it is next to impossible for them to push us into June. In fact, I did this because we had this strategic concern. I was assuming they wouldn't want us in June because June is a primary, and that's where most of the races are going to be decided, right? If you've got a one-person or a two-person race, it's going to be decided in June now because we have these open primaries. So you've got to have at least 3 people in the race, and nobody gets 50% in June. Then you got to run off between the top 2 in November. So you realize now you can have, well, in partisan elections, you can have 2 Republicans or 2 Democrats or 2 whatever. They're no longer really party primaries. That's not what's happening. There's this sort of global runoff free-for-all. So if we are in the June election, we can tilt there. If we're not in the election till November, which is what is almost certain to happen, then we'll see what races are left that are open at the county level or at the city level in the 2 cities in the county. But I think it's impossible for them to push us into June, and I don't think they would want to. And so we are heading for November 2014. No, we can't do a special because we'll be too close to November. There are all these weird rules that the election has to be more than 88 days away. But if you get 20% of the votes, then it can't be more than this, can't be more than 120, unless there's a regular election coming up within 180, and that's where we'll be. So we are on a date with destiny in November 4th, 2014.
And they could have an opposing initiative on the ballot. If they wanted to put this on the ballot, they could do that. We'll have an initiative ready to run against theirs that fulfills our position. And like I said, we haven't gone at this halfway. We've measured these timelines in a scientific manner and put it on paper so we know where to do what. We don't want, strategically, we don't want the Board of Supervisors really to wait too long.
I mean, I wrote it at the top of this thing on the third line. The initiative will run simultaneously with the referendum, which is going to create a choice, right? You can either vote, yes, we like what the Board of Supervisors did, or you can vote, yes, we like this initiative, right? Now, what happens if they both win? I am almost sure, but again, we're out in some weird territory here, that whoever gets the most votes wins, and the other one doesn't, right? So, and of course, what we want to see is no on the referendum. We don't want what the Board of Supervisors did, and yes on the initiative, and that'll be really clear. But it is possible that they can both come through, and then, you know, if you have two initiatives on the same subject, the one with the most votes wins, and that's basically the situation we're going to be in. And that's another one of the things that, you know, we can't necessarily have, you know, everything we might want. We got a poll, and we got a poll. If the two of them go, you know, where are the numbers going to be? This is going to be some really kind of fancy polling. So if you get the phone call at your house, you know, answer the questions, or if you know, tell people that, you know, if you get this poll, it's about Lake County, and we need to know. So we need real people to answer the phone and go through the whole crazy question thing. Thanks.
Great. This is a question that I am going to direct at Dan Rush. Is there anyone or any organization, local or otherwise, working on removing cannabis from the Schedule I federal drug list? If so, who is doing the work and what is the status on this political/legal action?
So in Washington, D.C., in the United States Federal Court, ASA has a case going. ASA's National Division has a case going that's been going on for 9 years to hoping that the court will order the DEA to re-examine what the scheduling is for cannabis. There are some various state activities here and there where folks are trying to or have gotten cannabis rescheduled. And didn't Maine get rescheduled to, I believe Maine or Connecticut, somebody got cannabis rescheduled to Schedule II in their state scheduling. First it was Connecticut, yeah. And other than that, there's not a lot of activity going on that. ASA's case has been the most high profile, the most successful, but still, when you go to federal court, when you go to appeals court, you've got to prove two things. One is standing, and the other is merit. Is that right, Mike?
This is what it comes down to. If Congress says the earth is flat, this is the level of proof that they have to show. Look at that. It's round, it's not rolling. Therefore, the earth is flat. That is called the rational basis test. That is the test that is applied to an agency decision. So, cannabis has no medical use? Sure, because why? I don't know. If you smoke it, it makes you cough. That would be sufficient basis to hold that cannabis is not medicine under the rational basis test. And that's why they say you can't fight City Hall. But anyway.
Frankly, my opinion is that we're going to read state regulations, and the states will be allowed to regulate when a legislator picks up the agenda from the Senate Judiciary Committee that's been holding hearings on the topic. that's being designed to develop an agenda that will allow a legislator to draw up a piece of legislation that says that Congress says that the states can regulate. There's treaties involved in that stuff, a lot of different topics, but that's where I think it's going.
So the next question is actually a combination of a couple of questions because I think they all relate to each other. One on the card is dispensaries in every zip code. And the other one says, can we agree to have a balanced approach that includes sun-grown and light-grown? There is strategies at play, and we've had some discussion as to whether or not it is prudent or possible to add dispensaries to an initiative that would be on the ballot in November 2014. And it may be a possibility, it may be a legal possibility, it may be a possibility that doesn't poll well either. And we're going to employ a scientific approach to deciding whether or not that is. And there is a potential to run a dispensary ordinance right next to this thing, simultaneously, a separate ordinance, initiative for dispensaries as well, which I think is an issue for us. And then sun-grown and light-grown. You're right, light-grown has slipped under the radar up until now, and it seems to have been thrown in their draconian ordinance as an afterthought, limiting it almost so restrictively it's nearly impossible. There are a lot of states and counties around the state who are not addressing the issue from a zoning standpoint because it is not an issue from a zoning standpoint. If we do put something in our initiative that addresses indoor, it will be something along the lines of making it comply with all local building codes. And along that, and maybe you guys can expand a little bit on the planning and zoning aspect of that.
Part of the reason why it can be advantageous to leave indoor off of an initiative like this is because we do get into the building code and the electrical upgrade issues. And in California, you have basic 1,500 watt service in most places, and that's why you see a lot of the kind of freebie allowed personal cultivation for indoor maxed at about 1,200 watts. We haven't polled it, but I would make a pretty strong bet that allowing for more than 1,200 watts is unlikely to poll well because then people get concerned about fire hazards. And
It's
then,
only 4 amps. 4 amps, that's all it is.
right, but and so
No, dryer runs 30 amps.
right, but this is
Well, this isn't the venue to discuss electrical theories.
Right, and so I'm just telling you what the conversation comes back from the municipalities. So if we talk about what comes back from municipalities, the concern is that the general building code allows for 1,500 watts. And then when you overload circuits, which happens when you get into 2,000 light watts and above, and circuits become overloaded, they want to see electrical upgrades and firewall protection. And that's where you get into a permitting glitch, which sometimes conflicts with PAC. So it can be tricky to bring indoor into that conversation.
Just real quick, one thing that everybody's touched on, Kristen's touched on, is polling. We have got to do polling, okay? I mean, we can sit here and write the initiative that says that I get everything I want, and it can make total sense. How many people here think everybody ought to have a legal firearm ownership right in this country? Okay, well, there's a whole bunch of people in San Francisco and LA that don't agree, okay? And we can be right, we can be wrong. But the fact of the matter is we want San Francisco and LA to vote for us when we run initiatives there. We want Lake County to vote for us when we run initiatives here. How many people think that everybody should have the right to take their child to the doctor? It makes sense, huh? It's the biggest argument going on in the country. There are people that don't agree, okay? And what we have to do is not be right. What we have to do is make sense. We have to draft and run the referendum and the initiative that is going to win. And that means we're going to need folks that don't understand anything about us other than what they've read in Reefer Madness or what they've heard from whoever or whatever, or their local fundamentalist-driven organization or whoever or whatever they are. I'm not going to say anything other than that. And we have to get those folks to say, look, that's Lake County running this initiative. And what they're saying, we agree with enough to vote for. Or as James pointed out, the referendum, to vote against. So that's why we got to do polling, and that's why it doesn't matter what makes sense and what's right, for the most part. What matters is that we have stuff in this initiative, in the referendum, that people are going to vote for, and in a way so that people will vote for it, and it works for the county, and it works for you, it works for us, okay? So sometimes we're going to be right, and it's not going to make any sense, and sometimes it's not going to make any sense, but it's going to be right. And that's where we really have to stick together.
Terry has something to add to that piece.
At the planning commission meeting, where this was approved by them, they kind of made it really clear that they would like to have a dispensary ordinance re-initiated. So there was a concern from the commission members that there would be no access for people, and this was their answer of how they would deal with it. And they probably are going to go ahead and bring that back to the table. So I think we probably would be better to leave it off and let them see what they're going to do, and then we can get a response.
It's true, they may surprise us and come up with their own dispensary ordinance that makes sense, and we won't have to waste our effort on putting something.
That's unlikely.
I've been surprised before, but you know, it will make sense to somebody, so,
That's the other thing we're doing here. We're building the tank and loading the missile, but hopefully we don't have to use the tank or fire the missile.
Right.
Okay, but we do have to agree.
in our actions here today, and raising money and putting them in a pack and showing that we're organized and showing that we have the institutions at the table, the guys that are here watching for the Board of Supervisors might go back and say, these guys are ready to rock and roll, and they might just decide that they don't want to fight. In which case, we'll probably end up with our urgency ordinance as a permanent ordinance, which was still a compromise. We can decide then if we want to accept that, or if we want to go forward and run an initiative in 2014 and put our initiative on the ballot. Not what they say, but what they say. Can you write your question on a card for me, please? I'm sorry?
After the meeting, I spoke with Jim Comstock about several issues. He indicated to me that he felt that they absolutely needed to revisit dispensaries, and that he was going to bring it back to the board because he felt it was a mistake getting rid of dispensaries. And I think that's something that we need to know, that someone from the far right of the board wants to revisit dispensaries and wants to push to bring them back.
Yeah, and I have to say, the people that we see as far right on the board and have actually been the most open-minded in our discussions with the board on this issue. This is a good question. Can the BOS decision be appealed immediately in California law as a civil rights violation if they pass it?
I'm sorry, one more time?
Let me try to rephrase that question a little bit so it makes sense the way I read it. Is there any sort of appeals process available to us as a remedy to the BOS decision?
If they pass that ordinance?
Yeah.
You know, you can challenge it in court and allege that it is somehow constitutional and defective, either on its face or as applied. But if your thought is that, you know, we're patients, my doctor says I need 99, I have a right to grow 99, or however you want to construct that argument. You know, unfortunately, the California Supreme Court has so far been very clear that both dispensaries and cultivation are subject to zoning regulation up and to and including bans. This is not a ban, but it gets pretty close in some ways. California Normal is appealing some little town, Oak something, Live Oak, yeah, where there was a complete ban, and they think that maybe because they have no dispensaries and no cultivation in that town, that's the law.
Is that the one Alfred's taken up, or is that the Riverside?
No, it's
Alfred's taken one up.
yeah, no, it's Cal Normal, and I don't know who they've hired. But short of that, something that drastic, you know, this This ordinance is likely to pass constitutional muster under the existing California Supreme Court precedent, which is why the work in the state legislature that Dan's been doing for years and that we're hoping will come to fruition very soon in this coming legislative session is so important, because that is something that the legislature can fix. And it's also why ultimately running are we not talking about the L word? Is that the deal? Okay, so then ultimately legalization, becomes important as to how it happens. And, my 2 cents is, I think, treat it like alcohol, let ABC run it. You will notice in California there are no wet and dry counties, right? ABC is a constitutional agency, its jurisdiction is statewide. There is booze in every county, every city. It can be regulated on the zoning, but it cannot be banned. And cannabis should be treated exactly the same way.
And it's important to know, to look one step beyond the horizon while looking in the past, is that something we didn't have during Measure D and some of the political landscape that has changed since then is that we have the Cole memo. I don't know if anybody's read the Cole memo, but it specifically addresses some changes in enforcement and the federal government's viewpoints on cannabis in states that have passed regulating cannabis, passed laws regulating cannabis. We're also working on regulation at the state level. There's 3 different pieces of legislation, and some of them are more close than others, but some of them are pretty darn close. And it's my belief that we're going to see those in the first half of next year, and that's going to mean a for-profit regulatory scheme that will be not unlike Colorado, which some of the architects of that policy are here in this room right now. So, again, we have the best and the brightest here working, guys who have put this stuff together in other places very successfully. I'm having a little problem with the handwriting on this one, but I think I'm gonna paraphrase it just to make it easier. There is a part of the ordinance that addresses this is the proposed ordinance from the county that addresses needing notarized authorization from a property owner if you are a tenant. Is this going to be addressed in our ordinance?
I'll let James answer the second part. I just wanted to share a little information. So currently in the state of California, when you cultivate a crop that's produced for human consumption or even alfalfa and you rent land to do that on, you have to show a letter of approval from the landowner as a farmer of any other crop. So that's just a bit of information about agriculture and how those general practices work.
I was in the Sacramento planning department yesterday for way too long, submitting a conditional use permit application for a dispensary. Now, a dispensary is a weird thing because, you're right there where they can see you and you're advertising on Weed Maps, and if they want you, they can come and get you. They know where you are. So I'm emailing the landlord, can you sign this thing, can you fax it over, what have you. I still think cultivation is emerging, and I think that might be a place where a little bit of silence might be in order. You're going to have to deal with your landlord issues. If your landlord don't like it, they're going to try to evict you, and they're likely to win. Okay, so you got to come to some kind of accommodation with your landlord. My thought about the requirement is that it seems a little pushy of the county to say to somebody who has a piece of property and wants to rent it out for a state law legal purpose that, oh, by the way, would you incriminate yourself for alleged federal violations, aiding and abetting the manufacture of a controlled substance? Because what was that? That wasn't the Fourth Amendment, that was the Fifth Amendment. So, I would tend to kind of shy away from that, but, I like silence, silence worked really well for a long time.
I see some people moving around. I just want to let you guys know, we've only got the room until 8 o'clock, so we are going to wrap this meeting up, and I'm going to give you some important information in wrapping it up. So if you're heading towards the door, give us another minute so we can find out a little more about how to get involved. There's one more question, though, that I think is a really good question that I want to address at our panel. It's someone with more experience in this than I, but this is a longer question, but I'm going to condense it. How does polling work? How does polling work?
Polling.
This question deals specifically with home telephones and cell phones, but I think they poll on everything.
Can they get it in the mail?
So polling is part of the science of how you get from 2 + 2 = 4. So if you want to get somewhere, if you want to get from here to where you're going, you draw a map there. And that's what polling is. And polling is it's a science. Polling is something that's easily manipulated, something that is can be very, very, very targeted, depending on who writes the questions.
Right.
Something that we want to make sure that we have the people that are writing the questions, we know what the questions are, what they're designed to do, which is get a real response. You don't ask a question saying, would you like a dispensary on corner A or corner B? No, you ask, do you know what a dispensary is? Would you like one in your neighborhood? If one was in your neighborhood, would you want it on corner A or B? So it's a very technical, scientific process that has to be done just right. It costs a lot of money to do. And if you do it, we save ourselves a whole bunch of money in campaigns and messaging.
Right. So I love polling. Polling is a statistical science, right? And as Dan says, it's an art form because it's all in how you phrase the questions. So, but what you're going to do, right? First of all, there is a magic number in the universe, and the magic number is 400, right? You need N400. You need a sample of 400, no matter how big your population, whether it's a few thousand or a few million. If you don't have N400, you don't have anything, right? And it should be fairly random. So you got to watch that you're not skewing, like, well, it's all, rich female Republicans or something. You want a random 400. And then you need some demographics on them, right? And if we use the voter rolls, which is what we use, because a lot of people put their phone numbers on there, I know how old you are, what your sex is, what your zip code is, right? Which is a damn good indicator in a lot of parts of the state anyway of your socioeconomic status, right? And I can ask you during the poll, we get some demographics on, okay, sort of who are we talking to? And then when you lay out your questions, you can ask the same question forwards and backwards. And you know how they do that thing where they ask you, I'm going to read you some statements and I want you to tell me if you agree strongly or you agree somewhat, or you don't really know, or you disagree somewhat, or you disagree strongly, right? That seems like a ridiculous thing to go through, but it is really, really important because the intensity of the view that people hold affects a whole bunch of things. So even, right now, cannabis is polling legalization. Yay, we're over 50%. But the strongly agree is still fairly weak. And the strongly disagree is still fairly strong. And what we've got is a soft middle, people. And they can flip-flop, okay? You've got that soft, that's soccer moms. Soccer moms are in the middle, flip-flopping around. And at the moment, they're flip-flopping our way. So all of that stuff is really important. And when you get your polling results back, you get a really, really good idea of where your support is, where you're weak. You can also poll opposition messaging, where the other side is strong and where the other side is weak, and where our responses to the other side are strong or weak. So it is critical going in. And if we put language together that polls at 60 or 65%, we win. Okay, that's it. That's the rule, and that's what we're aiming for.
So, and just a couple of things, in closing, I'm gonna talk about how you can get involved with any of these organizations up here. I'm gonna let them tell you how you can get involved with any of the organizations up here. One of these questions here is, are we going to learn from the Measure D failure and how conservative medical marijuana and against medical marijuana this county is? And we are definitely not forgetting the past. We're not forgetting where we've been and moving forward with this thing. We have taken the best parts of Measure D and moved forward with it. And we absolutely have an understanding of what this county is. And what we don't have, we are going to develop through a scientific method, through polling and everything else. This is going to be a professional campaign. And I want you to envision an industry here in Lake County. You know, you look at, every year, everybody sees the pear sheds fire up, right? They're out there, and there's forklifts everywhere, there's pear trucks running all over the county. You see them with the big white tubs on the back of the flatbeds, and you know it's pear harvest season because you see it move around. You know it's planting season in Lake County when you see the dirt trucks rolling around in April and May, right? We see the dirt trucks everywhere. How many dirt trucks do you see as opposed to those pear trucks? So what do you think, when we have a regulated industry in Lake County, what do you think that's going to look like for us as far as jobs, good jobs, union jobs with health care benefits? What is that going to look like when we have cannabis sheds full of people trimming, processing, making edibles, and refining cannabis products? With union jobs, union pay, union benefits, what kind of economic opportunity is that going to mean for our county? What a different place this is going to be with that sort of tax base. What a safer place to live. What a better place to raise your kids. And that's what our vision is for Lake County. That's what my vision is for Lake County.
I have to make one comment. May I please make a comment?
Yes, because you're the godfather.
23% of the county residents control the direction of this county. Because the other 45% that don't vote are busy up in the hills planting their plants. Let me tell you something. We are the majority. We need to get it out to disseminate the information to all our brothers and sisters out there, big and small, the vital importance and crucial necessity of this group organizing to get you to go out and vote. Because all this money, all this time, and all this dedication won't mean shit if we don't get out there and vote. They will win again and again and again.
Register and vote. That's all okay. How many people here are registered to vote? How many are going to re-register to vote as absentees so you can vote at home? From your mailbox, because that's going to increase our voting base by 40%. And register 5 friends.
So listen. In the back of the room, if I have a box and it says donations. So that is the crude beginnings of our fundraising process right there. You can drop up to $99 in that box anonymously and help us get this ball rolling, right? We've already raised $50,000, and that's all on its way into a PAC. Now, if you want to write us a bigger check, come and talk to me after the meeting, and I'll tell you how to do that. You can write me a check as big as you want to, and we will put that money to work. If you want to donate later, possibly, you're going to be able to find us in a couple of different ways. If you want to donate to KABIC, you can go to LakeKABIC at Gmail. You can email us. It's LakeCabicc@gmail.com. And we don't have a website up yet, but I do have the domain name, and it's going to be cabic2014.org, CABICC2014.org, and we will have a way to donate there. If you don't have a whole bunch of money, but you've got time and you've got energy and you've got a heart for what we're doing, then I'm going to urge you to go to the next PRC meeting, to go to the next ASA meeting, to get involved with these folks here, so that we can organize our efforts to put boots on the ground, to register voters, to get people out and vote. Please, if you have any questions for the panel that didn't get asked, we'll be around for a few minutes, but especially talk to us if you've got some resources to share with us. We're really interested in hearing about that. Dan?
And one quick thing, if you're a patient and you're struggling and you don't have a lot, but you got $5, you got $10, $50, and you've got some time, and you want to make some phone calls, and you want to talk to some people, go to the PRC meetings. Terry and Pete are going to be organizing these meetings. They're going to be calling them soon, and we're going to be there also, talking to people about the issues with the small farmers and the patients. Thank you.
And also, if you're interested in one of these booklets that Kristen was showing us, the best farming practices, we do have a few up here. We're asking you because it did cost us some money. If you would please make a donation in exchange for those, we would really appreciate that. And in closing, I see everybody getting up, but just one more thing. Listen, everybody,
Hang on.
before you leave, I've asked the people here to let you know again how to contact their organizations, the PRC and ASA and Normal, so.
Okay, so real quickly, because we got to get out of here, I want to let everybody know, Dan mentioned the fact about telling our story in front of the public and in public comment. We need to eliminate that part of public comment because the supervisors just turn the switch off, right? So what we're offering you, if you have a story about how cannabis has affected your life and what it has been to you and why it's important to you, contact us directly. We will do a story in it for Lake County Magazine, which is lakecomagazine.com. And we will also post it on Facebook for everyone to see. And we can do it anonymously as well, so you don't have to put your name in it. But we want your story to be told. We just can't spend all the time at those meetings having everyone tell their story. The next thing is I want to make sure that Kristen gets us the brochures, because we will also be taking donations, because we're going to have to do a lot of outreach and we're going to need a lot of help. So anybody who gives the PRC a donation will also get one of her brochures, and I'd like to print them for Lake County. That would be very important. And the third thing is, main thrust of our group is going to be to get people to register to vote and to vote for this. So let's stand up and do it right.
And how can they get a hold of the PRC one more time?
The phone number is 701-6416. And you can email me directly at terry@sssmultimedia.com. Okay, so that's two connect ways, and then you can also connect with me on Facebook.
And if John would share with us again the information on the ASA and the meetings.
The Americans for Safe Access meetings are the third Wednesday of every month at the Moose Lodge at the corner of 53 and 20. It's at 6 o'clock, and I hope to see you there. I don't think we have our local website up yet.
And
We'll have a website up before the first of the year.
And normal, if people want to get involved with Normal, how do they do that, Ron?
Call me at 272-3893, 272-3893. Just tell us. I'm really wanting to say something, I don't know.
Yes.
And I think Joe wanted to say something too. Do you still want to say something?
A lot of people know me, and like I said, we're gonna need as much donations as we can to get this movement going. So anybody that gets a hold of me and wants to donate $100, $50, or whatever, please do so, and I'll make sure it gets to the proper hands. I'm really, really grateful for you, so please help us out.
Thank you.